Welcome to this special public affairs presentation on WCMY Radio, a debate featuring the candidates for Illinois' 11th Congressional District. I'm Stephanie Pulowski, and we thank Republican incumbent Jerry Weller and Democratic challenger John Pavich for their participation. Joining me in posing the issues and questions for the candidates are WCMY News Director Rick Koshko and reporter Jonathan Billick of the Times newspaper. Here is the structure of the debate, gentlemen. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. The questions will then begin with Congressman Weller to answer. That was chosen in a coin toss before the show. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the issue, followed by a minute rebuttal from the opposition and another minute rebuttal. We're going to start with Congressman Weller. You now have 3 minutes for your opening statements.
Well, good morning, and thank you to the voters of LaSalle County for the privilege of serving as your representative. You asked me to work hard and to make a difference, and I'm proud to say that I have worked hard to make a difference here at home as well as in Congress. I've worked to make job creation, lower taxes, energy independence, and our veterans real priorities. I've worked to look out for local communities and succeeded in bringing home real results. On the House Ways and Means Committee, I fought to lower taxes and create jobs. My legislation eliminated the marriage tax penalty and gave working people the opportunity to save more for retirement. I fought successfully to lower taxes for every taxpayer, and today a family of 4 with an income of $50,000 saves $2,000 in taxes. I fought for energy independence and have worked to replace imported oil with homegrown biofuels made from corn and soybeans. LaSalle County became a big winner when the energy bill became law. We doubled the amount of biofuel used, and private investors today are moving forward to construct and operate ethanol and biodiesel plants in Seneca, Princeton, and Streator, creating construction and operating jobs as well as higher farm prices. Local farmers will tell you that corn prices are up. In fact, $2.85 a bushel today because of greater demand for ethanol production. Thanks to the energy bill, a Streator manufacturer, Transco, has added almost 60 new jobs because of new power plant construction. Hundreds of millions of dollars in new wind energy investment is now underway, creating construction jobs, good rent for farmers, and clean power. I believe we need to do more, and I'm working to pass my 25 by 25 initiative, the Biofuels Act, increasing biofuels use to 25 billion gallons by 2025, eliminating Saudi Arabia as a supplier. You've also asked me to work to help local communities with job creation projects and to help schools and children. I fought the bureaucracy when they proposed regulations that would have shut down Pilkington's glass plant with the loss of 150 good-paying local jobs. They backed off, and now Pilkington is investing tens of millions of dollars right here. Because of my efforts, Ottawa High School has a levy to protect against another flood. I obtained $11 million to construct the Marseilles National Guard facility, and I've helped Utica recover from the tornado with over $1 million in federal funds. I fought to double the funding we provide for veterans health care, and we delivered the Veterans Outpatient Clinic in LaSalle. Now I'm working to make sure the federal funds are there to construct an additional 80 beds at the LaSalle Veterans Home. The Illinois-Michigan Canal is our history as well as a key part of our economic strategy. Congress endorsed my legislation investing $20 million in tourism and job creation along the I&M Canal corridor. There's more to being an effective congressman than repeating slogans. It's about getting the job done, being effective, and bringing home real results to local communities. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pavich, you now have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I'd like to thank WCMY for hosting this debate. 2 years ago, I was working as a counterterrorism officer for the Central Intelligence Agency with a team responsible for tracking terrorist cells across the Balkans. While I received 5 commendations for my work, it became clear to me that our efforts were being undermined by an administration that placed politics above everything else. After starting a war of choice in Iraq, they then failed to give our troops the equipment they needed to survive, and they intimidated their political opponents into silence. This is a national problem with local roots stretching right here to LaSalle County. Our representative and his colleagues in Congress failed to either ask questions or provide oversight during this period when our brave men and women in uniform needed them the most. And so I decided to run for office because it is my generation that is fighting this war, and it is my generation that will have to pick up the pieces after the career Washington politicians are done and have been long gone. The voters of our district have an important choice to make this November, so let me clarify the main difference between myself, my opponent, and his party. Simply put, my opponent and his colleagues are concerned with the interests of their big money contributors, and more so than with the interests of their own districts. Mr. Weller took nearly $400,000 from energy companies, and then rewarded them with billions in tax breaks and let them slide on price gouging. They've given tax giveaways to people like Paris Hilton, but voted to cut student aid funding. And even though this district has one of the largest union populations in the state of Illinois, My opponent voted for CAFTA, which is going to take away jobs. And anyone from this area knows how badly we need those jobs. I'm running for Congress because I think that the big companies and the richest of the rich get enough help, and that it's time for the middle class, hardworking Americans to get something for their efforts. I believe that the middle class is the engine of our economy, not the wealthiest 1%. And so when I'm elected, I'm going to visit our troops in Iraq and work to find answers. I'm going to defend the rights of working Americans and fight to protect our students and our seniors. I'm going to be available for you because as a representative, it will be my job to hear you. We've got too much at stake in our country to keep trying the failed policies of the past. We need a different direction, and that is what I hope to bring to Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Pavich. We are now going to proceed with our questions. Our first question is going to come from WCMY News Director Rick Kashko. You can go ahead.
The question is, how much authority should the federal government have in wiretaps, record requests, and other maneuvers used in investigations before government authority is curbed in the name of constitutional rights?
Mr. Weller, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks for reminding me I go first. Well, clearly, one of the challenges we have is how do we monitor terrorist activity? As you know, terrorists know no boundaries. It's estimated Al-Qaeda has a presence in 65 countries, including our own. So clearly, the Patriot Act, which was passed by Congress with bipartisan support, has been a useful tool. Thanks to the Patriot Act, we've seized about $140 million in terrorist assets as a result of the tools that were given to our federal law enforcement as well as our international intelligence agencies. And for the first time, as a result of the Patriot Act, the CIA and the FBI can talk to each other and share information to connect the dots. The bottom line is we need to be able to monitor the flow of terrorist activities, and particularly when it comes to communications. That includes monitoring incoming phone calls from terrorists to telephone numbers inside the United States. And of course, the program which Congress has authorized would allow the monitoring of these calls from the standpoint of tracking where they go, essentially putting together a matrix. Once they have that matrix, they can then go to the local judge, get the necessary warrants to actually wiretap that particular phone and monitor those phone calls once they see there's a regular pattern. So I think it's important. We've also given the president and the military the authority to properly prosecute terrorists as well. You know, when John McCain talks about torture, he speaks from experience. When Lindsey Graham, a senator from South Carolina, talks about proper honoring our treaties and making sure that we have the tools available to our military, you listen as well. And we passed legislation with bipartisan support just 2 weeks ago, clarifying the authority of our military to prosecute terrorists, and of course, and to keep them under wraps and out of our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. We're now going to have a minute rebuttal from Mr. Pavich.
Well, I think this is one of the most important questions that we have to struggle with right now, is trying to find a healthy balance between fighting successfully the war on terrorism, but also balancing our civil liberties and protection of those liberties. Having worked with the CIA, I certainly gained a unique perspective into the threats that we're facing, and they are real and they do exist. And we need to do everything that we can to track down, hunt, and destroy those terrorist elements that would do us harm. We also have to remember who we are, and we always have to stay true to who we are, and that means that we have to find a balance so that we don't give too much authority to the executive in terms of infringing on our civil liberties. And I think that's one of the areas where this Congress has allowed the executive to accumulate so many powers, including the ability to wiretap, which I think has may be essential in some areas, but I think we have a situation now where there is an executive that is overstepping the boundaries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pavich. Mr. Weller, you are now on the clock.
1 minute, right?
Yes, 1 minute.
Well, one thing that's really important to note, the prosecution legislation, the prosecution of terrorists, as well as the surveillance of terrorist communication, both of those pieces of legislation moved through the legislative process. And there was a real kickback from the Congress when it came to the standpoint of adopting every piece of language that the administration wanted. We moved through the legislative process, and of course there were objections to some of the requests of the administration. Bottom line is the legislative process is the clear, proper way to address these issues. Like I say, when John McCain talks about torture, when Lindsey Graham talks about proper prosecution from a military tribunal, they both speak from experience. And that's why the Congress, which has a very wide variety of experiences and backgrounds, did its job when it came to passing the legislation to give the administration